Have you ever wondered why your own mind turns against you at the exact moment you need clarity the most? In a world where everyone is constantly connected through social media and endless streams of information, men are expected to stay sharp, confident, and unbothered at all times. Yet inside, many feel a constant pull between who they want to be and the impulses that keep dragging them back. You scroll through polished images of success and strength, and you tell yourself to push harder, but the truth is that your mind often works with a different agenda. It reacts before you think, it judges before you understand, and it creates fears that do not match the reality in front of you. You blame stress or pressure, but beneath the surface, something deeper is directing your reactions, and you barely notice it until it is too late. Your mind is not your enemy, but it has been shaped by years of distraction, comparison, and unresolved emotions, and that makes it unpredictable. When you react to a message from someone you want approval from, or when you shut down after a small setback, it feels personal, but it is often your mind repeating old patterns without asking for your permission. Modern life exposes you to constant noise, and your brain adapts by creating shortcuts that do not always serve you. You think you are making conscious decisions, but in reality, most of your choices are influenced by fears and beliefs you never pause to question. This is why you keep falling into the same traps, even when you swear you will do better next time. The mind betrays you not out of malice, but because it is operating on a script you never wrote, and it is time to read it. Most men believe they are in control of their thoughts because they can explain their choices after they make them, yet real life keeps proving otherwise. You tell yourself that you decide how to respond when someone challenges you, but your reaction is already forming before you even speak. You assume you are the one choosing your habits, yet you reach for your phone the moment silence gets uncomfortable because your mind cannot sit without stimulation. You think you judge situations fairly, yet the smallest reminder of a past failure can twist your perception without your awareness. This illusion of mastery feels convincing because you live in a time where everything promises control. You have apps that track your sleep, your steps, your money, and your time, and this creates the belief that your inner world is just as measurable and controllable. The truth is far simpler and far more uncomfortable. Your mind is running on patterns learned long before you became the person you claim to be today. Modern life exposes this illusion every single day. You tell yourself that you will stay focused, yet the moment you sit down to work, your mind drifts to memories or worries that seem to appear from nowhere. You promise yourself that you will not lose your temper, yet the wrong tone from someone important to you can pull you into anger before you understand what happened. You expect to stay confident, yet one moment of comparison at the gym or in your workplace can create an insecurity that feels older than your adulthood. Your mind betrays you, not because it seeks your downfall, but because it is following a program built from experiences you never examined. The more you insist that you are fully in control, the more these unseen patterns continue to shape your life without your permission. There are moments when you sit alone and you know exactly what you should do next, yet something inside you stalls your momentum before you take a single step. You tell yourself that you are tired or unsure, but the truth is that a hidden part of your mind is working against your progress. This inner force pulls you back toward familiar patterns because it sees change as a threat, even when the change would improve your life. You may have felt it on days when you planned to push forward, but ended up drifting through small tasks that kept you busy without moving you anywhere. You may have sensed it when you avoided a conversation that could have resolved tension because the mind prefers predictable silence over uncertain honesty. Modern men experience this more than ever because life now demands constant adaptation, and the inner saboteur resists anything that challenges old beliefs. It uses doubt, distraction, and hesitation as tools that feel like rational thoughts, but are actually emotional defenses that formed long before you understood their purpose. You experience the saboteur when you want to take on a challenge, but suddenly remember every past mistake. You experience it when you aim to set boundaries, but find yourself staying quiet because the mind fears conflict, even in situations where your silence has cost you more than speaking ever would. It shows up when you choose comfort over growth and then convince yourself that you are being practical. It appears when you plan to change your routine but end up repeating the same behavior because it is easier than confronting discomfort. You may see it in the way you push away opportunities that require vulnerability, or in the way you lower your expectations to avoid disappointment. This inner saboteur operates in the background, and it survives by keeping you predictable, safe, and unchanged. The only way to weaken it is to notice its voice and recognize that its warnings are not wisdom, but outdated protection that no longer fits the man you are trying to become. Most men assume they choose comfort because it feels good, but comfort today is not the warmth of a peaceful life. It is the silent pull that keeps you stuck in routines that drain your ambition without you noticing. You see it when you come home after a long day and tell yourself you will work on your goals after a short break. Then the hours disappear in games, videos, or quiet scrolling that feels harmless in the moment, but slowly weakens your drive. You feel it when you stay in a job that no longer challenges you because it pays enough and feels predictable, even though a part of you knows you are losing pieces of yourself. Modern comfort is not soft and relaxing. It is a trap disguised as stability, and it teaches your mind to settle for the minimum because the minimum asks nothing from you. You begin to confuse survival with progress, and your mind convinces you that familiar misery is safer than unfamiliar growth. This comfort trap does not arrive with warning signs. It grows through repetition until days blend into months and your goals become distant ideas rather than living pursuits. The mind chooses comfort because it sees anything new as a possible risk, even when the risk is the exact step you need to take. You notice this when you stay silent about your needs because it avoids tension, or when you avoid learning new skills because it threatens the identity you already understand. You avoid confronting habits that waste your time because the routine feels easier than change. You choose predictable evenings over pushing yourself because predictability reduces the possibility of failure. Yet every comfortable choice has a hidden cost. You grow softer with each avoided challenge, and your confidence slowly erodes every time you retreat. Comfort promises relief, but it often steals the momentum that separates the man you are from the man you could become. The moment you recognize the comfort trap is the moment you regain the power to rise above it and rebuild the discipline that modern life quietly takes away. There comes a point in every man's life when he realizes he is not reacting to the present, but to an old story that was planted long before he understood its influence. You see this when someone makes a simple comment and it hits you harder than it should, not because of what they said, but because it touches a belief you have carried for years. You see it when you hesitate to take on something important, because a small part of your mind repeats a familiar message that tells you that you are not ready. These stories are created from moments you barely remember. Maybe it was a childhood situation where you felt ignored, or a moment in school where you were embarrassed, or the first time you failed publicly and convinced yourself it meant something about your worth. Your mind recorded these moments and turned them into narratives that shape how you see yourself today. Modern life exposes this even more because every environment you enter asks you to perform in some way, and every performance activates an old belief that you did not realize you still carry. You can witness these stories in the way you judge your potential before you even try. You can see them when you assume people are thinking the worst of you, even when no one has said anything. You experience them when you interact with someone who reminds you of a past disappointment, and your guard rises even though the present person has done nothing wrong. You feel it when you avoid new opportunities because the mind tells you that failure will confirm a narrative you have been running from. These stories act like invisible scripts that control your reactions and choices, and you often follow them without questioning their truth. The reality is that many of these stories were created by a younger version of you who lacked understanding, yet they continue to influence the man you are now. The moment you begin to question these inherited beliefs is the moment you start rewriting the narrative that has shaped your life without your permission. There are parts of yourself you try to hide, even from your own awareness, and they reveal themselves in the moments you least expect. You may notice it when someone receives praise, and you feel a flash of irritation even though you know you should feel supportive, or when a mistake triggers anger that seems larger than the situation. These reactions feel like they come out of nowhere, yet they come from the pieces of you that were pushed aside because they did not fit the image you wanted to protect. Modern life makes this more visible because every environment demands some form of performance. You present a calm exterior at work, you act collected around others, and you choose a steady tone even when your inner world is shaking. The more you try to bury the emotional weight, the louder it becomes in the moments when pressure exposes what you have avoided. The shadow holds frustrations you never expressed, insecurities you never explored, and disappointments you pretended did not affect you, and it waits for situations that closely resemble the moments that created it. You can see this hidden side when you react strongly to someone who mirrors a trait you dislike in yourself, or when you distance yourself from people who remind you of choices you regret. You may notice it when you judge others for behaviors that quietly live inside you, or when you avoid responsibilities that force you to face traits you do not want to admit. This shadow is not the enemy. It is the part of you that contains honesty without polish and truth without performance. The modern man often carries these hidden pieces because he was trained to remain composed. Yet this silence strengthens the very traits he tries to escape. The more you ignore this buried part, the more it directs your behavior from the background. The moment you acknowledge it without fear is the moment you gain authority over the parts of yourself that have controlled you in silence. There are moments when something small happens and your reaction feels far stronger than the situation itself, and you sit there wondering why your chest tightens or your thoughts race even though nothing serious has occurred. This happens because your mind is not responding to the present. It is responding to a memory that was never fully understood. You may notice it when a certain tone reminds you of being dismissed in the past, or when a disagreement triggers the same feeling you had during an old argument that left a mark on you. These wounds do not need dramatic origins. They can come from moments where you felt unheard, unsupported, or overwhelmed, and your mind stored them as warnings for the future. Modern life exposes this loop because daily life is filled with reminders. A raised voice at work, a quiet moment in a relationship, or a sudden setback can make your mind replay an emotional pattern that has been waiting beneath the surface. You do not always see the connection, but your body reacts before your reasoning steps in. You experience the trauma loop when you keep choosing people who repeat the same emotional lessons, and you wonder why different faces create the same pain. You experience it when you pull away from someone who cares, because closeness reminds you of a time when you trusted the wrong person. It shows up when you aim to improve your life, but sabotage your progress, because failure feels familiar, and familiar feels safer than uncertainty. You do not repeat these cycles because you want to suffer. You repeat them because your mind tries to resolve an unfinished experience by recreating it again and again. The loop continues until you recognize that the past is guiding your reactions in the present. The moment you see the pattern clearly is the moment you gain the chance to break it, rather than repeat it for another season of your life. There are days when you feel overwhelmed even though nothing dramatic happened, and you wonder why your mind keeps creating pressure where none is needed. This is the ego at work, not as a loud voice, but as a quiet influence that shapes how you see yourself in every situation. You notice it when you feel the need to prove your worth, even in moments where no one is questioning it, or when you feel threatened by simple feedback because it touches the image you have been trying to protect. The ego convinces you to stay defensive instead of curious, and it tells you to act certain even when you are unsure. Modern life feeds this pattern because success today is often measured by how others perceive you. So the ego pushes you to maintain an appearance even when it drains your peace. It shows up in the way you feel pressured to constantly perform, achieve, and stay composed. And it becomes louder when you feel you are falling behind. You can see the ego at play when you argue, even after realizing the conversation has lost its purpose, or when you ignore a mistake because admitting it feels like admitting weakness. You may notice it when you hesitate to ask for help because you believe you should be able to handle everything alone. This part of your mind makes you chase validation at the cost of your growth, and it turns simple moments into battles for control. It convinces you that slowing down means failure, and it uses comparison as a tool to keep you restless. The ego promises protection, yet it often keeps you stuck in an exhausting cycle of proving instead of becoming. The moment you recognize its influence is the moment you begin to separate your true self from the image you have been defending. And that separation is one of the strongest steps a modern man can take toward real authority over his life. There are moments when you catch yourself choosing the easier path, even though you know it leads nowhere, and you justify it by saying you are tired or that you will start tomorrow. This is the comfort trap, and it silently grows stronger each time you surrender to it. You see it when you scroll your phone instead of dealing with responsibilities, or when you choose distraction instead of facing a difficult truth. Modern life encourages this pattern because convenience is everywhere, from instant entertainment to services that remove the need for effort, and this slowly weakens your ability to stay disciplined. The trap is subtle because it never announces itself as danger. It presents itself as relief. You convince yourself that resting is necessary even though you have not exerted yourself, and you say you deserve a break even though you have not taken a single step forward. Comfort becomes a habit that hides itself as self-care, and you only notice its impact when you look back and realize nothing has changed. You can feel the comfort trap working when you avoid uncomfortable conversations, or when you let small problems grow simply because addressing them feels unpleasant. It appears when you choose routine over risk, because routine feels familiar even when it brings no satisfaction. The trap becomes more powerful when you allow fear to disguise itself as logic, telling you that staying still is smarter than trying something new. It feeds on your desire for certainty and uses it to keep you in places that no longer support your growth. Many men stay stuck, not because they lack talent, but because they allow comfort to become their decision maker. The moment you understand that comfort can be an obstacle rather than a reward is the moment you regain control over your direction, and that awareness is often the first real step towards strength in the modern world. There are days when you feel frustrated because life does not follow the script you wrote in your mind, and you blame circumstances or people for ruining plans you believed were secure. This frustration comes from the illusion of control, a belief that you can shape every outcome if you try hard enough. You see it when you overthink every decision because you fear making the wrong choice, or when you replay conversations in your head because you want to rewrite what already happened. The modern world strengthens this illusion because it gives you access to endless information and options, and this convinces you that certainty is always possible. You try to manage everything from your schedule to your future as if every detail can be predicted, yet the smallest unexpected event can shake you more than it should. Control becomes a silent obsession, and instead of helping you, it keeps you on edge, waiting for life to cooperate with your expectations. You notice the illusion at work when you cannot relax unless everything goes exactly how you pictured it, or when you get irritated by small inconveniences because they interrupt the image of perfection you hope to maintain. It appears when you try to influence how others think of you, or when you avoid risks because you cannot guarantee the outcome. You feel its weight when you struggle to accept uncertainty, even though uncertainty is part of every real path forward. Many men today carry this burden because they were taught that a strong man controls everything, yet this belief only leads to exhaustion. The truth is that life becomes clearer when you stop trying to command every result and start focusing on what you can actually direct, which is your response. The moment you recognize that control is not a weapon, but a boundary, is the moment you begin to move with steadiness instead of fear. There are moments when you react strongly to something small, and the intensity surprises you because it feels bigger than the situation itself. This is the mirror you avoid, the part of yourself that gets exposed when life reflects something you do not want to acknowledge. You see it when another man's confidence bothers you more than it should, or when someone's success makes you uncomfortable, even though you know it has nothing to do with you. The modern world constantly places these mirrors in front of you, from the competitiveness at work to the quiet comparisons you make in everyday interactions, and each moment reveals something about you that you would rather ignore. You may distract yourself with routines or responsibilities because looking inward feels risky, especially when you fear discovering something that challenges the identity you built. The discomfort you feel is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that a truth is knocking, and your mind is trying to protect the image you have learned to depend on. You can sense the mirror at work when you get irritated by someone who reminds you of a part of yourself you have not developed, or when you judge a behavior that secretly reflects your own insecurities. It shows up when you feel defensive, even before a conversation begins, or when criticism feels personal because it touches the gap between who you are and who you claim to be. Men today often struggle with this because they were taught to project confidence rather than confront uncertainty, and this creates an identity that looks stable but shakes easily. Facing the mirror does not mean exposing yourself to shame. It means accepting the internal signals that guide real growth. The moment you learn to observe your reactions instead of hiding from them is the moment you begin to build a self that is not threatened by truth, but strengthened by it. And that shift changes everything about how you move through the modern world. There are mornings when you wake up knowing exactly what needs to change in your life, yet you delay the first step because awareness alone feels safer than action. This is the moment when many men get stuck, not from ignorance, but from the weight that comes with finally understanding themselves. Awareness brings clarity, but clarity also brings obligation, and that obligation confronts you in the routines you outgrew, the relationships you keep for comfort, and the habits that no longer match the man you want to become. Modern life makes this struggle even sharper because distractions are everywhere, and it becomes easy to convince yourself that thinking about change is the same as living it. You may read, learn, and reflect, yet remain in the same patterns simply because the familiar feels easier than rebuilding your foundation. The truth is that awareness without responsibility becomes another form of escape, and the longer you delay action, the more you feel the quiet tension of living below your potential. You can feel responsibility pressing on you when you realize that your choices are no longer accidents, but reflections of the man you are shaping. It appears when you notice that your reactions are predictable and that your excuses are rehearsed. It becomes clear when you understand that no one is coming to rescue you from your own inertia, and that the strength you admire in others is formed by decisions you still avoid. Men today often reach this point and then retreat, because taking responsibility means losing the comfort of blaming circumstances. It means accepting that your discipline, your direction, and your identity are built by what you consistently choose. Awareness is only the beginning, and responsibility is the bridge between knowing and becoming. So the question that remains now is simple and unavoidable. What choice will you make?